Astrology is an interpretation of the sky. To rewind the tape further back, like I was the weird one growing up, like I was the kid with the Ouija board being like, let's do, like
We're so scared of Ouija boards.
Not the Ouija board.
Derek is kind of in the thick of it right now.
Oh, wow.
Guys are such dicks about astrology so often. There is something cool I want to share with you about both of your charts.
What does that mean?
If I piss people off, like that's just going to have to be how it is right now.
Hi. Hey. It's Sarah and Lo Beeston, your Fairly Odd Sisters. Woo! Yeah! Please don't make me do it again.
Welcome back, guys, to the Fairly Odd Sisters. Today we have a really fun guest on the podcast. Her name is Aliza Kelly, and she is a professional astrology. Wait, you're a professional astrologer.
I'm a professional astrologer.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's really exciting because Sarah and I have known, like, I'm an Aries and she's a Leo, but we don't really know much more other than the few things that we see in the memes, like what those signs actually mean. But it's really, really interesting to both of us. And I think a lot of our followers would be really interested to find out more on that. So, like, a basic question that we would have is just kind of what does astrology mean and what are kind of those basics to astrology?
Cool. Yeah. So astrology is an interpretation of the sky at a given moment. It could be the moment that someone is born. It could be the moment of an event. So what we do is we sort of take a snapshot of where all the planets were in that moment, and then we interpret them. So it's really a language that requires a translator, an astrologer, in order to put the pieces together and to synthesize all of these moving parts. I like to say that astrology really is an art form because it is this, it's really the way that we are processing information and then disseminating it, sharing it. So it's not something that there are certainly going to be astrologers and there are certain archetypes that everyone is going to be in agreement around. They're just sort of like codified. But the way that we put all of the pieces together has so much to do with the lens in which the astrologer is interpreting it. And I really do like to share that because there's a lot of astrologers out there. There's a lot of people who dabble in astrology out there. And while we might have certain commonalities in terms of in terms of the archetypes, right? In terms of like the very baseline things that we know about each zodiac sign or each planet, the way in which an individual filters that information is going to be informed by their practice, their art form.
That's really, really cool. I feel like we just some of the things I've even seen online about Aries or about Leos, I'm always like, oh, that totally aligns with me and I can totally see this. Or even with me and my husband, he's a Cancer. And I think I always see like different things and we can be like, oh, like that totally aligns with kind of how we are.
Does each sign also have a planet that goes with it?
Yes.
Oh,
so
I didn't even know that.
we are talking, when we talk about you being an Aries or a Leo, we're talking about your sun sign. It's where the sun is at the moment that you were born. But you also have moon signs, you have rising signs, you have Mercury and Venus and Mars, and it continues, it goes on. It's a big party in the sky. So every planet and celestial body that we track in astrology is doing a thing. And the way that it does that thing is in the zodiac sign that it occupies. So the sun, which is the easiest one for us to connect to because, well, first of all, it's sort of established by your day of birth. So it's a little bit easier to figure out. You don't need your date, time, and location of birth in order to gather that information. But your sun also represents the way that you take up space, the way that you move through the world. It's sort of like your aura, your radiance. It's what makes you shine. It's how others perceive you as shining. So your sun sign, which is informed by the day that you were born mostly, is a really great starter placement to understand, okay, this is how I sort of walk into a room. This is how I radiate. This is how I sort of exude my energy. But then you have, for instance, the moon sign, which is what's going on internally. It's your emotional inner world. It's how you
Mm.
feel about things. So your sun sign doesn't necessarily capture how you feel about things in the same way that your moon sign does.
Okay.
And there's just, from there's lots and lots of different placements, and all of them have a role and a function in our lives.
How long did it take you to learn all this? And are you still learning, or do you feel like you've kind of mastered all of the knowledge that there is for this? Or how did you even get started in this?
Oh my gosh, I'm of course still learning. I mean, I think that one of the reasons that I gravitated towards astrology is because it is an ever learning. It's something that there's so much to learn, whether it's a new technique, an ancient technique, or a modern technique that you can apply, whether it's something that's shifting in the sky that requires new sort of interpretation and a different lens, or even in charts that I know extremely intimately, like my chart or my husband's chart, charts that I know like the back of my hand. One day I'll look at it and be like, I had never seen that before. Like,
Yeah.
where that come from? And
That's
I
crazy.
say, I have this sort of idiom that I like to say, which is, you know what you need to know when you need to know it. And that's so true in astrology. For instance, like if I see something in my chart or my husband's chart that I hadn't seen before, I didn't need to know about it until the moment that I discovered it. So it's not like I was missing out. It's that piece of information, that interpretation, that offering wasn't something that was relevant in my life or in his life and whoever's life
Mm-hmm.
until it actually is. And at the moment it does become relevant, it will expose itself.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. And is this a sort of, I wouldn't say I'm getting like, I don't even know if this is the right question, but is there something that led you to this? Like you were feeling like lost in some way and you gravitated to something, you were looking for something and you found this and it was kind of the answer for
That's
you?
truly exactly it. That's
Oh, okay.
exactly what happened. I was in my early 20s. I mean, like, to rewind the tape further back, like I was the weird one growing up, like I was the kid with the Ouija board being like, let's do, like
We're so scared of Ouija
Not
boards.
the Ouija board.
it's back. It's
Yeah.
back. I'm bringing it. I'm bringing the Ouija board out.
Oh
I was
my gosh.
that kid who was like light as a feather, stiff as a board at the slumber party, so like the writing was on the wall, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it clearly, I was a kid who really felt very magical and felt very connected to my magic. And then you lose that as you get older. But for me, it actually, I was just in my early 20s and I was trying to figure out who I was and what I wanted to do. And even bigger than that, I was feeling a complete and total existential dread of feeling very fragmented, really feeling sort of like I didn't understand myself. And it was a clue that I got through astrology. I'm a Leo as well. And I felt, of course, I am a Leo, certainly. But there's also other pieces to who I am that aren't captured in just the Leo archetype. So astrology didn't fully hit for me until I discovered I was a Pisces moon. And Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. It's a water sign. It's really sensitive. It's really intuitive. It's a major feeler. And having that piece of information felt so empowering. And it felt like it really unlocked the opportunity and the potential to be myself, to like actually just embrace the multidimensionality of who I was. So I started to go deeper. I started to learn more. I was able to find and connect with a mentor, Annabelle Gatt, who was extraordinary. And I would not be doing any of this today without her support. Um, and it's been now 10 years of doing astrology, and this is the very truncated version of it. Of course, there was lots of ups and downs and moving parts, but astrology has been a constant in my life for 10 years, and has been a part of my outward identity for 10 years, which is also really wild.
That is so cool. I love hearing about that because I feel like everyone, you know, once you find that thing that just clicks with you, oh my gosh, like this has been here all along, but it's finally like you're finding that part of you, which is cool.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of the pushback was that it's hard to be in your 20s, like in general, period, right? And for me, it was really hard at that time when astrology was not as mainstream as it is now to be single in my 20s and be interested in astrology because guys are such dicks about astrology so often. And I didn't realize how much that was limiting me and how much that was actually like pushing, like keeping it at arm's length because I didn't want to have to deal with being shamed and
Mm.
ridiculed when I was dating people.
Mm-hmm.
So it took a while. It took me to sort of get into my late 20s, go through my Saturn return to develop the confidence that I needed in order to be like, actually, like this is what I love. It's what I'm good at. I get a lot of great feedback for it. I want to really integrate this fully into my life and I don't want to feel judged for doing it. That I was able to, build the career that I have now around astrology.
Why do you think guys are so turned off by the thought of astrology? I mean, I loved one of the answers that you gave us. It was like, no, women and gay men are totally up for astrology, but when it comes to straight men, for some reason, they're so like
Against it.
Why do you think that is? Like, is it just it started with a few guys and then it just kind of was a bandwagon, or what do you think it is?
So I'm going to give men the benefit of the doubt in this answer. This is a very, demure answer to say the
Very
least.
mindful.
Very mindful
Very mindful
answer.
Very cutesy.
I think that astrology is a language that requires a lot of self-reflection and a lot of it requires us to hold multiple truths at the same time. And I think that broadly speaking, that isn't really men aren't really guided to think in those ways in the same way that broadly speaking women and girls are guided to think in those ways from the time we're really really little, from the time we're very little we're navigating things like how to be charming but not be slutty, like how
Yeah.
to have certain, how to show up in a space, but also have your own internal world about what's going on. And then you also have your girlfriends, if you're lucky enough to have close friends, where you can like unload all of those layers with, where you can unpack the fact that every experience is not just from one perspective, but has so many details and so many components to it. And I think that process of us looking at something and analyzing it holistically is comes naturally just based on the way that we're raised and the way that we are sort of guided societally. Now, it's also interesting to consider that when I talk about straight men not being into astrology, I'm talking about like American straight men, because there's also cultures, there's an Indian tradition of astrology where there isn't the same connotations, where guys equally participate in Vedic Indian astrology as women do, and actually it's very male dominated. So we are talking about like American cishet men here. So trying to think of like, what is that experience like? And I don't think it's necessarily one that has the same sort of like complexity, emotional complexity presented from an early age as women do. And
Yeah.
that is the benefit of the doubt for them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally feel like you're describing girls to be very introspective. And I feel like you're 100% spot on with that, because I think even just getting older, and we both got married super young, but I feel like we're both learning this with our husbands, and they're both like now being able to like reflect on like their childhood and kind of dive into the feelings and why they act the way they do. And I don't think they've ever done that in the past.
Yeah.
Like I think this is a very new thing for them.
And I love the people have talked about like men have boxes that they can kind of go into one box and that's what they're focused on. And women's brains are kind of more like wires are everywhere and kind of crossing to other things. And when you're thinking about this, it reminds you of this, and it's kind of all over. And that kind of aligns with what you're saying as well, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think exactly. I mean, I think that, and whether that's, the way that we are wired, on an evolutionary level, but I would probably argue it's more cultural, you
Mm-hmm.
know? It's more cultural that, I mean, when you think about like, I have a new baby. I have a 9 month old. She's not even nine and a
Oh,
half yet. She's 9 months old.
that's just a little
And
baby.
a little
So
baby.
cute.
And,
Oh,
when I think about her and I think about some of her peers and her being raised as a girl and her peers being raised as boys, like I can start seeing differences now,
Mhm.
in class and little music classes that we're doing. And that obviously is going to build and intensify, and the dynamics of it are going to continue to sort of separate and splinter out. And it's interesting from my vantage and to look at, who is my community? Who
yeah.
are the people who are interested in this? And it is predominantly women.
Yeah, that's so true. What do you think astrology tells us differently, or what do you think it tells us about our personality types and who we are in relationships with?
Yeah, so I mean, I think astrology is a phenomenal tool in understanding who we are. And like I always like to start at like who is the person, right? Because we have to understand ourselves or have a baseline in who we are in order to know who we are most compatible or incompatible with. I'm not like as keen on incompatibilities because I think anyone can make it work with
Mm.
anyone so long as they are um aware of who they are, that person is and what their needs are, and then recognizing that we all have different needs and we all have different ways of communicating. Now, Sarah and Lo, you guys are both fire signs, which is really
Ooh.
fabulous. Fire is very passionate, it's very creative, it's very inspired. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, so it's an initiator, it's a doer. Um, Sarah, you're a Leo, so it's a stabilizer. It's someone who likes to keep things going and sort of figure out how you can build, fan the flame, sort of commit to something. Lo is more like, I have an idea for this, let's just do it. But the combination of, the combination of Aries and Leo, two fire signs, is really fabulous. There is something cool I want to share with you about both of your charts, which is that you both also have your moon in Leo. So we had talked about,
Oh,
our
crazy.
sun signs being one thing and then our moon being something else. And both of you have Leo moons.
Oh,
And yeah,
wow.
and not just that you have Leo moons, you have Leo moons that are actually like really, really close to each other. Sarah, you have a 5-degree Leo moon, and Lo, you have a 6-degree Leo moon. So they're 1 degree away.
Whoa.
It's
What does that
practically inconsequential.
what does that mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds good.
So, like,
for-
we
in
were
terms of
born
friends,
kind of
but
where the moon was 1 degree away. Is that what that means?
Yep. So
Whoa.
it means, so your moon represents your emotional inner world. It's what you need to feel satiated. It's what you need to feel secure. It's what comforts you. It's how you comfort others. And the moon in Leo is very much a fierce sort of protector. It's really loyal. It's really sort of it's committed to the world that it creates for itself. It wants to build and establish a really beautiful life. It has sort of an air of theatricality, of drama, but it's best expressed through creativity and through artistic outlets. It loves to sort of like, it, it wants to figure out a way for it to have visibility and for it to reach an audience, but this isn't
Totally.
necessarily like ego driven. It's really because there's a story that needs to be told. And the Leo moon feels best and best satiated when they have a microphone in front of them and they can express, and share these stories and inspire others and know that they're lifting people up within that action.
crazy.
That is so
That is
wild. Because it's totally like aligning with what we obviously
what we're
do.
doing currently.
And like the creative side, I've always been way more creative than like scientific. I don't even know if that's the right word to use on the opposite end, but yeah, that's so funny. And
Yeah.
the fact that we both have that is really cool.
Lo and I would like to consider ourselves adults, even though sometimes we find ourselves acting a little more like kids. Do you agree with me?
Sure.
Agree
Yes,
with me.
agree.
But adulting always comes with some not so fun things. I mean, I guess you can choose if you want ice cream for dinner or pancakes like me. But you do have to like do the adult things like taxes and making doctor's appointments and stuff that's hard to do. I don't know why picking up the phone and making a doctor's appointment is so hard. But we have to tell you guys about this really cool platform. It's called ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and a website where you can search and compare high quality in-network doctors and choose the right one for your needs. And then you can click instantly to book an appointment. So we're talking over 100,000 healthcare providers across every specialty that covers mental health, dental, pretty much anything that you would need. And you can get an appointment with them. And then you can also filter doctors that will take your insurance, which I feel like is half the battle. Yeah. Because it's so hard when you find a good doctor and then they don't take your insurance. And then you can have their actual appointment openings on a calendar so you can see exactly when to book them, which is so nice because that's the other half of the battle is figuring it out.
Oh, in 6 months they can see me.
Yes.
No, you can get somebody the next day if you need.
Totally. Yeah. Plus, ZocDoc appointments happen really fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. And you can sometimes even score those same day appointments. Game changer. I feel like every time I need an appointment for me or the kids, it takes a week to get us in. And by then we probably aren't even having that problem anymore.
Totally.
So definitely check out ZocDoc.
I know when I look for a doctor, I'm definitely going to be using ZocDoc. It takes all that searching out of it and it makes it so much simpler. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/fairlyodd. Find and instantly book a top rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/fairlyodd. ZocDoc.com/fairlyodd.
Yeah. So our friendships, like, are we good friends? Do we like butt head friends? Like, what are we?
Since we're both fire signs, does that mean that we're both like,
is that even how it works?
I don't know.
We are literally the noobs of the astrology world.
And it's so fun to
hear. You always have to start somewhere, right?
Yes.
You need to know when you need to know it. Right now, you needed to know that you're both Leo moons.
Yeah. Yes, that's
you
so
know that you're very, very aligned on that front. So yeah, I mean, of course, like there's always going to be things in charts that sort of create, like, offer a different perspective. You are just a little bit older and you just went through something called your Saturn return, which is a coming of age moment in our life. It's really significant. It's really important. And during that time, we often sort of question who we are, what we're doing, what we care about. I like to say that it's when you become your own, it's when you become your own person, right? So you're no longer creating an identity based on what your parents wanted you to be or what your partner wanted you to be or what your teachers wanted you to be or what society wanted you to be. It's like you're actually being like, I am ready to sort of come out on my own and do my thing independently. And if I piss people off, like that's just going to have to be how it is right now because I'm feeling like I need to burst out of the conventions, Totally. So that's what.
Do you feel like you felt
I think I have
recently?
Yeah.
I feel like you have. When she's saying this, I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So, and then Sarah, you're going to be going through this next, for you, that's not currently, that's going to be in the next 18 months is when you're going to start to experience this. So like things like that can be important dynamics to consider in relationships. It's not just about what is going on in your immediate chart. It's about the timing of things, recognizing that we all go through cycles at our own speed and our own timeline. So sometimes someone is going to be going through some sort of an experience that another person isn't going through. And then that could feel like, misalignment, right? That can feel like, oh, this is challenging because I thought we were supposed to be seeing eye to eye on everything, and it's not that you don't, it's just that we go through different experiences at different times. So that's something to consider is, that you both right now and then soon to be are experiencing these pretty significant life changes where you are sort of questioning and trying to figure out what you want your 30s to be.
Yeah, that is so true.
That's crazy. All right. So have our husbands, they've already done their, what was it called?
I think Derek probably in the next year. Because is it
Or
around
this year.
30? Is that when it happens?
Yes. So
Okay.
both
This year.
Derek and Tanner have now, Derek is kind of in the thick of it right now.
Oh, wow.
That is
So
crazy
That is
because
wild.
I see that. I
Yeah.
see that in him. But I've kind of just like, oh, it's just like around the 30s. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know the reason, but it's, yeah, I see him going through these like mind shifts and these changes. And he's really like thinking about his life right now.
Yeah.
And just, it's been interesting to watch because I feel like we were kind of on autopilot for a while. And now we're just kind of like, oh, let's think about this more deeply. And like, what are you feeling about this? And
Oh, yeah.
I think specifically in how we were raised and where we grew up, like the culture is very strong here. And we're definitely like taught to think and act in like certain ways. And not that it's good or bad, but it's just kind of, I think
What we've
all
only
been a little
known.
bit more on autopilot for our whole lives. So for you to say that, I fully see that in Derek right now.
yeah.
Even I watched Tanner kind of like transform. But I feel like it was good because we were both kind of transforming in the same way and kind of, and not like apart, but kind of growing together in that way, but letting each other kind of do what the other needs to do.
Do you think that's like a reason why, I mean, we've seen quite a few couples go through like these really hard times, like they call it the 7-year itch or whatever, but it's like around that time. Do you feel like that has something to do with astrology and going
It
through
does
these
have to do with
changes?
astrology.
Yeah.
Yeah, it actually is an astrological. So Saturn, which is what we're talking about, hits a quarter every 7 years. So a Saturn quarter is every 7 years. So
What?
so
I just
it
got
is
chills.
astrological. Yeah, the 7 years is 7
That's a
years
real
marks
thing.
really significant time. Yeah, for analyzing everything. I mean, for instance, this is like 7 years for me being completely full time. Actually, maybe it's 8 years now. But I was in the thick of this like 7 year, like I've been doing this for 7 years, going on eight or whatever it was recently. And I've been having a lot of like, well, how do I want to structure my business? And is it what I want to be? How do I want to be like being out in the world? Like, what are the things that I care most about? And then in relationships, you kind of go through that too, where you're like, is this the kind of dynamic that I want to have? Is this the kind of partner I want to be with? Am I truly living my best life, or have I stifled myself? So, yes, I mean, the remedy to all of this, the secret sauce is to one, acknowledge it and not be afraid of it, and to honor the fact that we change and we grow, and having different processings around what our life looks like and what it should look like is a healthy and beautiful thing. It's nothing to be afraid of. So it's important to sort of bring your partner into that process and explore it together. Not necessarily like explore like the craziest shit together, but if like or like maybe do that too. I don't know. But I think that it's important to not deny that experience and to honor it and to treat it with respect and to recognize that growth is means that we're still alive, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So cool.
That is really, really interesting and cool. Do you mind going over our husband's charts and kind of connecting how that aligns with us or how it wouldn't align or those types of things?
Sure. So Derek is a Virgo sun at the very last day of Virgo season and is a Virgo rising. I'm sorry, is a Virgo moon. So Derek is a Virgo sun and a Virgo moon. And what's cool about that for you, Sarah, is that you're a Leo sun and a Leo moon. So what I see there is that you were both born during new moons. So that's really, really cool. People born during new moons tend to be people who, well, I mean, there's so many components to it, but new moons start the beginning of a lunar cycle. So they're great manifestors. They're great visionaries. They're great at sort of like ideating and coming up with new ways of seeing the world. They also, are people who tend to project a lot on others, right? Because during a new moon, the sky has no nocturnal illumination, it's totally dark. So we often try to find the light source, right? From someone else, from an opportunity, and then we hold that and we sort of become obsessed with that. Like, where is this my light? You know, is this
Mm-hmm.
going to be my future? And the cool thing about being with another new moon person is that perhaps you both have done that for each other. Perhaps you're both each other's light sources.
That's
Um,
cool.
and it's a really beautiful and healthy way to keep that relationship and the partnership alive and sort of dynamic is to consider like we can always sort of see when we don't have perspective, we can look to our partner and get their opinion and perspective on it.
That's cool. Whoa.
That's so cool
Would have
because
never known that.
I feel like in the beginning of your relationship, you were like a huge light source for Derek.
Oh.
And that is like what everyone would say. Like, she's just bringing him out of this darkness and bringing him so much, he's making him so much happier.
Yeah.
And so
that is cool. And now I do feel like, I mean, we work together, so I feel like we have to like bounce off each other and to be able to make that work. And we're both in the same work, so we're both manifesting kind of the same things. So I see that too, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
that.
for Tanner and Lo, so Tanner is a Cancer sun and a Libra moon.
Mm.
And you, as we mentioned, are an Aries sun with a Leo moon. Now, the thing that really stands out to me the most here is that Tanner is a Cancer with a Libra moon. Those are both cardinal signs. Cardinal signs occur at the beginning of seasons. So, Cancer occurs at the beginning of summer. Libra, the moon sign here, occurs at the beginning of fall. Your sign occurs at the beginning of spring.
Mm.
So all of these signs are considered cardinal signs. And cardinal signs are also similarly, like it's the beginning. So it's a similar sort of initiator energy. So we see why you all are connected, right? You're all big thinkers and dreamers and can do things. You're doers. However, Cancer is much more sensitive broadly than Aries is. Cancer is a sign that uses the emotional inner world to sort of take action and to move things forward. So it's not that there's tension. It's that it each comes from, there's a different sort of energy source at the root of it. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. We talk about that all the time where I was just bringing it up to him. I'm like, it's so funny because I would see things of like Aries is more blunt, or I don't know if that's the right word, but more kind of direct, I would say. And Cancers are usually more sensitive or take things like, they have to be kind of, I don't even know what the right word is, but it's just more sensitive. And so and we totally find ourselves in that situation where I'll like say something and that like hurts his feelings. And I'm like, oh, why did that hurt your feelings? I wasn't, like I have to really be mindful of my words with him because he is more sensitive that way.
Yes, definitely. So that's something to consider. And like for you, you could be saying something very straight up. And for Tanner, it's going to be, there's like a tendency to be a little more passive aggressive. And then you don't want to find yourself like in this weird vortex of like, like hurting each other's feelings unnecessarily.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I think that's something we've totally gone through.
You both have Venus in Taurus. So Tanner's Venus is in Taurus and your Venus is in Taurus. And Venus is the planet that's associated with love and beauty and sort of aesthetics, but also values. So you have very similar value sets. You care about the same things. Like, you have sort of similar perspectives on what is important and what is beautiful and how to create that world for yourself. So that's really, that's very harmonious.
Oh, I love that.
There you go.
Yeah.
See, it's not
There's a good part.
It's not all yin and yang. It's no, that's
yes.
awesome.
I mean, I wouldn't even say like there's more. As I had mentioned, I don't really read for incompatibility. I just read for the dimensions of compatibility.
Yeah. That's very cool. I love hearing about that because we can always find like ways to kind of improve, even though there are those differences I've been like, okay, I need to, you know, be more sensitive in the way I speak, even if I don't think it's mean or whatever. And he can, you know, say more how he's feeling so that I know, you know.
Totally.
I have a question. Do you think astrology also is kind of connected to the love languages? You know how people talk about love languages and relationships? Do you feel like because of your sign or all of these things that we're talking about that
Those correlate?
those correlate?
I do think that they correlate. I don't think it's a one-to-one. Um, but I have noticed that when someone knows their love language, that usually seems to have some, you know, I can sort of look at their chart and be like, oh yeah, that kind of tracks. You know, I can see why this would be that person's love language.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. For me, my love language is physical touch. And
Love it.
And Tanner's is words of affirmation. Do you feel like that aligns with our charts?
Yes. I mean, that is also my husband is an Aries, and his is also physical touch is his love language. So you're
That's
proving
so
the point
awesome.
right now.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I love that. That's really
so
fun.
cool.
Okay. And then also, I was going to bring up, we were looking over some of your answers, and you mentioned that horoscopes and astrology they can correlate with pop culture events, and can you explain that more and how they, you know, correlate?
Gosh, I don't even know what I wrote about.
Well,
No.
well, just like say that, you know, you're watching The Bachelor and you're seeing these people on the TV screens, and you can kind of like, can you make guesses of what you think will happen based on basically astrology?
Yes, certainly. I mean, it's really fun. Like you can look at all of the different pop culture moments in time, you know, like like for instance, the fact that we are having a brat summer this summer, that we're coming out of our brat summer, I should say.
Yeah.
Um, we're ending it. And Jupiter has been in Gemini for it. And Gemini is much more associated with like being curious and like, you know, chaotic good. And it has like a very different kind of vibe to it than what we were experiencing last year when Jupiter, which is the planet of expansion, which very much speaks to sort of the zeitgeist of the moment, was in Taurus, which is much more sort of like aesthetic. It's much more femme. It's much more sort of like refined. And that was our Barbie time,
That's
you know?
really funny.
So I certainly like where we are in a moment lines up with where the planets are in the sky.
That is
That's so
really
cool.
cool. What do you have a favorite reality show that you feel like you can kind of correlate with astrology on?
The truth is that I have not watched a reality show really in a long time, but especially now that I'm a new mom,
Oh yeah.
I have not had any time to, which is sad. But obviously, like, you know, Andy Cohen is a very iconic Gemini, and I feel like whatever he touches turns to gold. So we stand.
Yes.
We stand.
I love that.
What is your daughter's sign?
She's a Sagittarius
Oh,
with a Leo moon, just like you guys.
Oh, that is
Cool.
amazing.
Yes,
Uh,
she's
do
part of
you-
the club.
do you think that you'll start teaching her all this when she gets a little older? And are you excited to teach her about it?
I'm so excited to teach her about it. I'm bracing myself for when she's a teenager and she is going to absolutely like rebel against all of it.
Yes.
I think it's going to be it's going to be completely inevitable, but I am excited for her to share that language with her.
Oh yeah. I mean, just talking to you for these 40 minutes, I'm like, I want to know more.
It's so interesting and so fun to learn about. Where
I
do you
think so too.
Yeah, you're like, me too. Where did this all start, and how did it become, like, where was the origin story of astrology?
It started thousands and thousands of years ago. It started with our ancient ancestors who would look to the sky and create meaning, right? I mean, that it's really an ancient practice. Our current understanding of it and the way that we use it now started about 100 years ago. And sun sign horoscopes in magazines started in 1930. And I think that really And that coupled with psychology and the sort of dissemination of different psychological concepts and thinking about a psyche, thinking about an inner world, those two really came up hand in hand. So, yeah, the modern astrology that we work with is about 100 years old.
That's pretty cool.
I expected it to be so much older, but I guess, yeah, people didn't really talk about it until then.
Well, it is. I mean, it is a lot older.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
It's thousands of years old, and a lot of astrologers today use a medieval technique in astrology that has like had a renaissance, on Twitter.
That is so cool.
Yes. So you can certainly go back, but I would argue that the way that we talk about birth charts, the way that we talk about our emotions, the way that we talk about our inner world and our external world is sort of the version of it that is 100 years old.
Very cool.
That is really, really cool.
And I don't know this either, but what is the difference of astrology versus horoscopes, and like how does that work together?
Yeah, so horoscopes are a facet of astrology. So
Okay.
when we're looking at your birth charts, we're talking about birth chart or natal astrology. Um, Horoscopes are a different a different component of it. They are a piece of astrology, but they aren't the entirety of astrology. But as an astrologer who does birth chart readings and then also who does horoscopes and creates horoscopes and has for a very, very long time, I think that there's incredible value in horoscopes and in the way that we can work with those and utilize them.
And what is a horoscope? Like what is it?
It's a well, I like to think of them as sort of invitations. I like to think of them as sort of mindful as guides to shift your awareness to certain components or areas of life. So we calculate them based on where the planets are going to be based on each sun sign. And from that, we sort of describe what the flavor of, in my case, I have a podcast called Horoscope Weekly. So weekly horoscopes, right? I look at where the planets are going to be. And based on I go through all the 12 signs and I say, for each, this is how the planets are going to be impacting that particular sign.
Oh, that is very cool.
And you release your episodes every Monday, right?
I do. Yes.
We're going to have to be tuning in to that.
Really.
And all of you guys should definitely, if you want to learn more about this, go watch her podcast.
Yeah. So every Monday you basically go through each sign and you're kind of giving
for that week where
for
the
that
stars
week,
are, where
what
the
to expect.
planets are. Okay.
Yep, that's right.
That
Okay.
is so
So
cool.
do you mind giving us an idea of what this week, do you know the horoscope for this week and kind of what that would, a little taste of what they would get on your
Do you know what
podcast?
week this is coming out?
This is coming out next week, right? Next week, next Thursday.
On September 17th, we will have had a lunar eclipse. And eclipses in astrology are really, really big deals. This lunar eclipse in particular is meaningful because it's starting a brand new series that's going to continue through 2027.
Whoa.
So it's this week. It's important to pay attention to what is coming up in your life. Who are the characters? What are the storylines? What's at stake? Who's involved? Because those themes are going to continue to transform and go through their own sort of alchemy through 2027. And it doesn't mean like if you're having a shitty week, like it doesn't mean like, oh no, I'm going to have a really bad next 3 years. It really actually just is going to show you like these are the areas of life. I mean, especially if you're having an off week, like that's great because then you're like, these are the things that need work, right? These are the areas of life that I want to see improved by 2027. So I love the beginning of eclipse season because it's sort of like we're tuning in to the change and the transformation and the metamorphosis that's taking place in our life.
That's very cool. I love that.
Can you see lunar eclipses?
You can if you are on the path of totality.
Okay. Whoa.
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
If you are in the path where the sun and the moon
Okay.
are meeting. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
I
yes.
was like,
That's astronomical.
I
That's
was like,
that's
is
not
this a
symbolic.
club? Is this
No,
something
no,
that
no, no. It's not a club.
We just need to learn more English. That's what that
we
means.
yes, we're learning
No,
so
I love
much
that.
on this episode.
One of the questions that we had is what other factors besides your sign can be used to develop a personalized horoscope?
Well, all of
Is it-
your other planets.
Okay.
So,
it's-
your moon sign, when we think of a personalized horoscope, we're probably imagining like a birth chart reading.
yeah.
So that would be your date, time, and location of birth. And then my favorite app to use to pull that information up is an app called Time Passages.
Oh, very cool.
Does that give you like updated
It does, yeah. So
Stuff
Time
about-
Passages, and it doesn't fear monger, and the software was originally designed by astrologers from the 80s, so it's really, the ethics are in the right place for this app.
Yeah. Looking back, did you ever think this is what you would be doing for a
No.
career, for a job?
No.
What
no.
did you think that you were going to do?
Well, I graduated college with a degree in art history. So I imagined that I was going to be working in art galleries.
Mhm.
That's what I started doing when I graduated. I was trying to, make my way through the art world.
Mhm.
And that is where said existential crisis started to emerge.
Yes. So when you met your husband, were you doing astrology stuff?
Yes. So a piece of my story that I hadn't included is that I started an astrology dating app in 2014.
Oh, wow.
And from 2014 through 2016, my best friend and I from college had started this astrology dating app called Align. We were living in Los Angeles, and we were really a little bit not a little bit. We were ahead of the curve, right? We were ahead of it. And sometimes it sucks to be first, right? Sometimes it sucks to be the one who can predict something is going to be very big when you're a few years ahead of where that's going to be. So we had a really hard time getting investors, getting the tech world, getting the sort of greater community to take us seriously. I think it was a combination of the space that we were in, talking about astrology, us being women, us being young women in our 20s, in our early 20s. And it was a really challenging, painful, like heartbreaking time because we had such a good idea. And we had so much enthusiasm and passion and excitement for it. And we were really like shot down, and we tried to hold on as long as we could. And in 2016, we just couldn't hold on anymore. And we had to close it. We had to shut it down. At that time, was so broke. I had to sell all of my furniture to move back to New York, where I'm from, and start over again. Like I had to start from scratch, and I really had no idea what I was going to do. And my amazing mentor, who I had mentioned, lives in New York, and she invited me to her classes that she was hosting. She was hosting like parlors in her apartment in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. And she would just let me take them for free. And I was so broke, and it was so meaningful because it gave me a sense of purpose. It gave me something to do. And it also took everything that I had been working on and sharpened my skills so much. And it was in that time that I met my husband. And it was in this transitional time of trying to figure out who I was again, taking the astrology with me, but not quite sure how I was going to make it work and make a living and synthesize all of it. And yeah, my husband, who's an Aries, is a huge part of my professional life and the success that I have. I would not have it without his encouragement and without his support. It was sort of the missing link to me. I needed that kind of love, and I needed someone to really believe in me. And interestingly, as I'm saying this out loud, I'm also realizing that my mentor is also an Aries. So I guess I really needed
Aries.
I love Aries. I really have needed
And
Aries.
you're a Leo, right?
And I'm a
And
Leo.
so
And you
like
guys are an
Aries
Aries
and
Leo.
Leos
Yes.
are just like this.
That is
Yes.
amazing.
Which I love.
Yes.
Well,
I
I
love to hear.
love that for you. I
Do you want me
love
to scoot
that
over,
something that
Serena?
was so hard and you probably felt like it wasn't going to get better. Just someone walked into your life and completely changed it.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think so fondly to that time, and I recall it always, when I know people are going through hard times of big transition, and especially times where they're just like, I'm so broke, I'm so confused, I have no one, I'm so lonely. Like it isn't forever, It
Oh,
isn't,
yeah.
it doesn't have to be forever.
What's
Yeah.
wild is I feel like that app would do so well today. I'm like, can you start that
I
again?
know.
Like, let's bring that back.
Get
Like,
it going
that
again.
is
We need
such
to
a
get
good
that
idea.
up and running.
Because I think it totally aligns with how people are in relationships, and that would totally help people find somebody who they're compatible with or more compatible with than somebody else.
Yes, or at least like broker better conversations.
Yes.
right?
And even if you are in a relationship
Or
to
understand
it,
someone. Yeah.
Yep,
And
I know.
You're
From
like,
Jeez.
God's ears.
you're preaching to the choir over here.
She's like, I know. Okay. That's why we started it.
No, I just think it's so cool. I just want to learn more and more about it.
Yeah. And so when did you start your podcast?
So
This
my
is pretty
podcast,
new, right?
it's a new podcast. Yes. We launched it with the full moon in Aquarius, so on August 19th.
Very
And
exciting.
yeah, so it's just a little bitty baby, but it's I'm really excited about it. It's so much fun to get granular and really look at what's going on in the week ahead and help offer guidance for how the planets, the stars, the cosmos can support us, and what we can do with the constant growth and journeys and magic that we're all experiencing.
Yeah.
That's very
And
cool.
you have a book coming out. True?
I do have a book coming out.
Okay,
Yes.
when is that coming out and what is it called?
It's called It's All Magic. It's coming
Oh.
out October 22nd, and it's 365 reflections on astrology, on manifesting, on tarot, on all of the, fun witchy things that you might be curious about. And I sort of designed it to be like, how when you go to a yoga class and the practitioner, the instructor reads a passage at the end of a class and you're always like, wow, that hit, This is a book that's sort of intended to offer those daily readings, it's a daily book. So you can use it to sort of go through an entire year, 365 days, or you can just randomly pick a page at a time and see what comes up and see if it resonates with you. So yeah, I'm really excited
I
about it.
love that.
I
and
love
what's
that.
it called?
It's called It's All Magic.
Okay, yes. Okay, you said
I love that name
I'm trying
too.
to get it in my head, in my memory.
Yes.
So that's awesome.
I love that. And I feel like in high school, I found an app that would tell me kind of my horoscope that week and kind of like what you're talking about. And I loved it. And then I kind of just forgot. I would stop pulling it up. But I remember there was a time where I was like, I'd get little tidbits of this week you should expect this, or this month, And so I am interested in listening to your podcast every week because I just feel like I'm going to get those little tidbits again and reminders of, how to go through and make decisions and know that I'm not alone and, other people are going through these types of things too.
For sure. Yeah. I definitely check it out. I'm really excited about it. It's a really fun show.
That's so exciting. Will you have guests on your show or is it just you?
It's not a guest show. It's just me talking about astrology.
I love that.
Well, I feel like just our little talk that we've had, I've learned so much about myself, about Lo, about Derek and Tanner. I wish we had brought our babies stuff. It would have been so
that would have
fun.
been
Maybe
so
we'll have
fun.
you do a little reading on them later
Yeah.
to know what their signs are and stuff. Because I don't know. I don't even know what my babies are.
I think mine are, Ozzy was born in March. I think she's also an Aries. And Stella, I think, is either a Leo or a Cancer. She was July 22nd.
You could
Oh,
probably
yeah. So
tell
we
us
would have
right
to
off
look
the
at
bat.
the exact.
Yeah.
No, for July 22nd, we have to look at the exact birth time. Yeah.
Oh,
Ooh.
222, but we were in Hawaii. Does that change
We
things?
would have to pull it all up.
No
Yeah, it
way. That
does.
is
It
so
changes
crazy.
everything.
That is crazy.
Yeah. Because I remember being like, oh my gosh, she's either going to be a Cancer like her dad or she's going to be a Leo. And it was because it was around that time when it would change. So that was
For
exciting.
sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So is there
Cool.
anything else that you would want our listeners to know about astrology or about you personally? Anything you want to leave them?
I do have a community, a virtual community called the Constellation Club, where I host workshops every new moon and full moon, and it's a wonderful place to we practice manifestation and we talk about what's going on in the sky, and we have a Discord channel where we can learn about our charts and connect with other like-minded people. So definitely follow me at Aliza Kelly, which is AlizaKelly, and then I'll post about the Constellation Club there. But it's a really great resource, a great place to check out. I started it in 2019, so we actually just celebrated 5 years of the
Oh,
Constellation Club.
congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank
that's
you. Yeah,
amazing.
and it's a Virgo, and it's definitely very Virgo energy.
I love that.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. It was so fun to learn more about this because I've always been interested and intrigued by it, but never really got the behind the scenes of what actually goes on. And, you know, you've just taught us so much about all of this. So thank you so
Thank you
much for
so
joining
Yeah,
us.
thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here.
And make sure you guys go check out her podcast. It's called Horoscope Weekly. It comes out, it's on all streaming platforms, right?
All
You can
streaming
listen to it
platforms,
anywhere.
yep.
So go check it out. She's amazing. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Aliza.
Thank you.
And we hope you guys have a great day.